Anatomy of your weakness. Before we begin, look in the mirror. You see a personality there, endowed with rights, values, and an inner world. I see only a biological machine running on outdated software in a world that no longer forgives mistakes. Do you consider yourself protected because you follow the rules? Rules were invented by predators so that the herbivores would behave predictably. Your faith in justice is your collar. Your empathy is a lever pulled by anyone who has studied the mechanics of your instincts. While you sleep in the cocoon of your illusions, those who understand the laws of power are already marking your territory for demolition. Today, we dissect reality. Without anesthesia, without morality, only the naked mechanics of dominance. We will trace the path of Victor, a man who lost everything because he was good, and we will learn how he became the one whom the hunters themselves fear. Welcome to the food chain. Chapter 1. The Death of Trust and the Halo Effect. The collision phase. The boardroom of Avant-Garde Systems smelled of furniture wax and a faint hint of ozone from the working servers. Victor sat at the head of the table, clutching a Parker pen in his hand. Across from him sat Mark, his deputy, childhood friend, and the person he trusted more than himself. Victor, understand. It is not personal. Mark said it softly, almost with sympathy. He did not look into the eyes. His gaze was focused slightly lower on Victor's chin. Victor felt a dry lump get stuck in his throat. His pulse quickened to 110 beats per minute. His palms became wet. He looked at the other board members. All of them looked away or studied their tablets. You want to say that behind my back, you voted to transfer the controlling stake to Triad? Victor's voice trembled on the last syllable. Mark paused for exactly 3 seconds. He slowly adjusted the cuff of his expensive shirt. At that moment, he looked like the embodiment of reliability. We are saving the company, Vic. Your methods, they are outdated. You are too emotionally attached to the employees. This is a business, not a charitable foundation. Victor opened his mouth to justify himself, to remind them of 10 years of working together. But Mark interrupted him with a barely noticeable gesture of his palm, as if calming a noisy child. This gesture hit Victor harder than any scream. The psychological X-ray phase. What do we see? A typical use of the halo effect, combined with cognitive suppression. Mark had been building an image of a faithful friend for years. Victor's brain, striving to save energy, created a simplified model. Mark equals safety. When Mark began the attack, Victor's brain faced the cruelest cognitive dissonance. Biologically, it looks like this. The amygdala sends an alarm signal. The adrenal glands release cortisol and adrenaline. But the prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic, is blocked by the old pattern of trust. Victor cannot attack because his biological system recognizes the aggressor as one of his own. The freeze reaction is the most dangerous in the social hierarchy. It signals your defeat to those around you even before you have opened your mouth. Mark uses microdominance, gestures of reassurance, control of pauses. He makes Victor feel irrational and emotional, while he himself broadcasts cold logic. The counter-strike phase. Victor felt fear turn into sticky nausea. I must explain to them that Mark is lying, flashed through his mind. No, stop. If I start explaining, I will lose. He forced himself to unclench his fists. He took a deep, inconspicuous breath with his stomach, reducing the activity of the amygdala. Mark, Victor pronounced the name as dryly as possible, stripping his voice of any color. Your concern for the company is touching. But let us remove the decorations. You have just confirmed that you violated your fiduciary duties. Victor did not wait for an answer. He stood up, slowly collected his documents. He looked not at Mark, but at the bridge of the nose of the oldest member of the board, evoking in him an instinctive desire to submit. Lesson number 1. Never appeal to the past at the moment of betrayal. Your loyalty is a currency that is just depreciated. Accept the new reality instantly, otherwise it will crush you. The sensory immersion phase. Outside the window, the London sky was the color of stale lead. Cold rain lashed against the glass, leaving behind uneven, jagged traces. It was too quiet in the office. Only the hum of the air conditioner reminded him that the building was still alive. This sound, monotonous and soulless, emphasized Victor's absolute loneliness. The world did not shudder from his collapse. The office walls of glass and steel remained indifferent. In this ecosystem, it is not the most deserving who survives, but the one who adapts to the cold fastest. Chapter 2. Information vacuum and the right to silence. The collision phase. A week passed. Victor sat in a small cafe located in the shadow of the office center he had once built. Across from him sat Anna, the company's leading lawyer, known for her ability to pull out the most hopeless cases. She was sent by Mark to find out about Victor's plans. "Vic, Mark is very worried." She stirred her coffee, looking at the foam. "He wants to offer you compensation, a very generous one. If you sign the waiver of claims now, you will be able to leave with dignity." Anna fell silent, waiting for his reaction. She left a pause, inviting him to fill it with anger, excuses, or bargaining. This is how professional manipulators work. They create a void that the victim, experiencing stress, seeks to fill with information. Victor remained silent. He looked at Anna, but his gaze was defocused, as if he were studying the structure of her skin. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. Anna began to fidget. She adjusted her hair, then took a napkin. Her pupils narrowed, a sign of growing anxiety. "Victor, do you hear me?" A barely noticeable crack appeared in her voice. Victor waited for another 3 seconds. "I hear you, Anna. Continue." Well, this is the best way out for everyone. You do not need courts, do you? It will ruin your reputation." Victor fell silent again. He tilted his head slightly to the side, reminding one of a bird of prey studying its prey. The psychological X-ray phase. Victor uses the information vacuum. In social psychology, there is a concept of fear of uncertainty. The human brain is evolutionarily tuned to search for answers. The absence of a reaction is perceived as a hidden threat. When you are silent in response to a provocation, the opponent begins to project their own fears onto your silence. Anna thinks, why is he silent? Does he know something? Does he have a plan? Has he already hired other lawyers? Her prefrontal cortex begins to generate dozens of scenarios, spending a colossal amount of mental energy. Victor, on the contrary, conserves energy. He uses it to observe Anna's micro-expressions, the twitching of the corner of the lip, a contempt turning into fear, frequent blinking, an attempt to hide a lie. Biologically, Anna begins a release of norepinephrine. She feels discomfort that she wants to end at any cost, even at the cost of giving away unnecessary information. The counter-strike phase. "So, Mark is afraid of courts," Victor finally said. It was not a question, but a statement. "No, I did not say that," Anna quickly inserted. That is exactly what you said. Victor cut her off. Your haste in offering compensation is directly proportional to the weakness of their legal position. Tell Mark that I do not buy into dignity. I only buy control. He stood up, leaving the untouched coffee on the table. Lesson number 2. Silence is not an absence of action. It is the most aggressive way of conducting negotiations. The one who speaks first sets the boundaries. The one who remains silent forces the other to destroy those boundaries. Chapter 3. False vulnerability and the trap of superiority. The collision phase. The evening at the private club. Mercury was filled with the muffled clinking of crystal and the smell of expensive tobacco. Victor sat in a deep leather chair, deliberately slouching. His jacket was slightly wrinkled, and his tie knot was loosened. The image of a man who was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Opposite him sat Stepan Gorsky, one of the main shareholders who supported Mark. Gorsky was famous for his love of dominating the weak. He came here to finally finish off Victor by forcing him to sell his remaining shares for a pittance. Vic, you look terrible. Gorsky leaned back in his chair, spreading his legs wide, a classic posture of territory seizure. He slowly sipped his whiskey, looking down at Victor. You need to leave. The Maldives. Silence. Why do you need this struggle? You have already lost. Victor lowered his eyes, imitating a tremble in his fingers. He began to nervously twist his wedding ring. Look at my hands, Stepan. Think that I am broken. See what you want to see. The cold voice inside Victor worked like a metronome while his body played the role of a victim. I did not expect this from Mark, Victor muttered, making his voice quiet and intermittent. We have been through so many years. I am having problems with the bank now. They are demanding the return of a personal loan. If I do not find cash by Friday, they will take the house. Gorsky leaned forward. His eyes flashed with predatory interest. He smelled blood. Is that so? That is regrettable. Listen, old friend, I can help. I will buy out your block of shares. The price will be below market value, but you will get the money tomorrow. Pure cash. Victor waited for a pause of 6 seconds. He swallowed hard, forcing his Adam's apple to jerk. This is difficult to simulate. But Victor deliberately recalled the moment of his strongest childhood resentment so that the physiology would react adequately. I do not know. This is too little, Stepan. This is robbery. This is salvation, Victor. Decide now or tomorrow. The bank will put you out on the street. Gorsky was smiling. He did not notice how Victor straightened his back under the table for a fraction of a second. The psychological X-ray phase. False vulnerability is being played out here. Victor uses Gorsky's cognitive bias, confirmation bias. Gorsky is already convinced that Victor has lost. Any action by Victor that confirms this hypothesis, poor posture, trembling hands, the story about debts, is perceived by Gorsky as absolute truth. At this moment, his critical thinking shuts down. Dopamine from the anticipation of an easy victory floods his brain, dulling his caution. Biologically, Gorsky is in a state of hunting excitement. His attention is narrowed, tunnel vision. He is focused only on the prey. Victor, on the other hand, uses controlled regression, a deliberate lowering of his status in the eyes of the opponent to provoke him into reckless actions. When Gorsky offers to buy the shares, he reveals his true goal. He does not just want to remove Victor, but to enrich himself at Victor's expense. Victor received confirmation. Gorski acts out of greed, not out of loyalty to Mark. The counterstrike phase. Victor slowly reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out, not a pen for signing the contract, but a voice recorder. Not a trace of weakness remained on his face. His posture became steely, his gaze icy. "So, Stepan, you are offering me a deliberately losing deal, using information about my distress, which you yourself have just confirmed, and you are ready to do this in circumvention of the shareholders' agreement, which prohibits preferential buyout without notifying the board?" Victor's voice now sounded like the crack of a whip. Gorski froze, his glass of whiskey suspended in midair. His pupils instantly dilated, a sign of a sharp release of adrenaline from a sudden threat. "This recording will go to the Ethics Committee and to the Security Service of Triad." Victor continued calmly. "They very much do not like it when their partners try to rat behind their backs. Now let us talk about how you will vote at the next board meeting. Lesson number 3. Present a false weak spot to the enemy. Allow him to feel his superiority. This is the best anesthetic for his vigilance. When he raises the knife, he will be maximally open to your strike. Chapter 4. Radical Pragmatism and the Amputation of Emotions, the Collision Phase. The next day, Victor met with his ex-wife, Elena. She was the person who could destroy his psychological defense with one word. Elena came to ask him not to torment Mark. "Victor, this is becoming ugly." She looked at him with reproach. "Mark called me. He is in a depression. He says that you are behaving like a terrorist. Is our friendship and everything that was between us really not worth parting peacefully?" Elena used emotional blackmail and triangulation, weaving the past into the current business conflict. She knew that Victor once loved her and counted on his sense of guilt. "She is using the same neural pathways in my brain as 10 years ago." Victor analyzed, feeling an old, familiar warmth rise in his chest, which was now deadly dangerous. She is Mark's tool. She is not a subject. She is a function. He looked at her lips when she spoke, but did not listen to the words. He counted the number of her blinks. 14 in 30 seconds. She is nervous. She knows that she is asking for an injustice. "Elena," he interrupted her mid-sentence. "Your coming here costs me $500 per hour. That is exactly how much I pay my consultants for the time I'm spending on you now. If you do not have legal arguments from Mark, this conversation is over." Elena gasped with indignation. "You have become a monster. Do you have no heart at all?" The psychological X-ray phase, Victor applies radical pragmatism. His goal is the deconstruction of the emotional trigger. When a loved one tries to manipulate you through feelings, they count on the work of the limbic system of the brain. Elena is trying to cause a release of oxytocin, attachment, or cortisol, guilt, in Victor. Victor, however, deliberately moves the communication into the field of market relations. Mentioning the cost of time is a powerful cognitive anchor that destroys the emotional fabric of the conversation. Biologically, this is called the amputation of empathy. In survival conditions, empathy is a luxury that a predator cannot afford. Victor realizes that any concession to Elena is a gift to Mark. He classifies Elena not as a beloved woman, but as an agent of influence of the enemy. This allows his prefrontal cortex to maintain full control over the situation. The counterstrike phase. "The heart is a muscle, Elena. It pumps blood. Mine is working perfectly right now." Victor stood up, adjusting his watch. Tell Mark that his attempts to use you as a shield only confirm his cowardice. Do not call me again. If I need to send Mark a message, I will do it through a bailiff." He turned around and left without looking back. He felt something finally break inside him. It was not pain, but liberation, as if an extra load had been thrown out of the backpack with which he was climbing a mountain. Lesson number 4. Emotions are interference in the radio broadcast of strategy. The one who appeals to your heart usually wants to get to your wallet or your freedom. Learn to see functions in people, not images from your past. Chapter 5. The destruction of reality and reverse gaslighting. The collision phase. 3 days later, Mark himself called Victor for a meeting. He looked exhausted, but a fanatical gleam burned in his eyes. Mark decided to use his ultimate weapon, gaslighting. "Victor, I have invited doctors," Mark said as soon as Victor entered. "Your behavior lately, these recordings, threats to Stepan. We all believe that you are having a paranoid episode due to stress. We do not want to judge you. We want to help you. If you sign a consent to treatment, we will hush up the matter with the shares." Mark laid a folder with some conclusions on the table. On his face was a mask of deep sorrow. This was an attempt to destroy the very foundation of Victor's confidence, forcing him to doubt his own adequacy. Victor looked at the folder, then at Mark. He did not get indignant. He did not start proving his sanity. Instead, he laughed quietly, almost sympathetically. "Mark, you are using a manual from the 90s. A psych ward for a competitor? Seriously?" Victor sat opposite, leaning back relaxedly. "But there is a problem. While you were drawing these certificates, I bought the debts of your security firm. And I know that over the last 6 months you have transferred 3 million euros to offshore accounts in Panama. I have the statements. But do you know what the most interesting part is?" Victor leaned forward, lowering his voice to a whisper. "I erased this data 5 minutes ago, and now only I know where the originals lie. And you? Are you sure you are in this office right now? Or does it just seem that way to you from the stress?" The psychological X-ray phase. Victor applies counter-gaslighting. Instead of defending himself against accusations of madness, he accepts the rules of the game and takes them to the point of absurdity. When you face an attempt to distort your reality, the best way is to create a counter-distortion. Victor introduces an element of information disorientation. He informs Mark of a real threat, the security firm's debts and the offshores, and then immediately calls it into question. "I erased them, or did I?" This creates cognitive paralysis in Mark. His brain cannot simultaneously process a threat and a doubt in the reality of that threat. Biologically, this causes an overload of the nervous system. Mark loses control of the situation, as he no longer understands what is the truth and what is a bluff. His strategy of accusing of madness crumbles, as now he himself begins to doubt his ability to assess the enemy. The counterstrike phase. Victor held a long pause, looking into Mark's dilated pupils. "You have 2 hours to cancel the minutes of the board vote. In 2 hours and 1 minute, the documents on Panama will be at the tax office. And no doctor will help you, because prison is a very real place, even for dreamers like you." He stood up and lightly tapped his finger on the folder with medical conclusions. "Keep this for yourself. You will soon need a certificate of insanity to avoid a prison sentence." Lesson number 5. If they try to destroy your reality, do not defend it. Attack the opponent's reality. Make it so that he himself begins to look for ground under his feet, and at that moment, knock it out. Chapter 6. Selective Honesty, or the Trojan Horse. The collision phase. On the threshold of Victor's office stood Inspector Caverin, a man whose signature could freeze the company's accounts for months. He was known for his integrity and pathological suspicion. Mark had set him on Victor, hoping that the audit would reveal gray schemes. Victor did not lock himself in or call lawyers. He opened the door himself. "Come in, Arkady Semyonovich. I was expecting you. Coffee?" Caverin sat down without taking off his raincoat. His gaze scanned the room. "Why this courtesy, Viktor Vladimirovich? You know why I am here." "I know." Victor sat opposite and laid a thin folder on the table. "And that is exactly why I decided to save your time. Here is a report on violations in the logistics department for the past year. We optimized taxes a little through shell intermediary firms. The amount is about 8 million. Caverin froze. He did not expect such a direct confession. His eyebrows shot up, and his hand instinctively reached for the folder. "Do you understand that this is a confession?" "Absolutely." Victor looked him straight in the eyes, without blinking. His face expressed fatigue and a strange relief. "I am tired of covering for other people's mistakes. Mark believed that we would get away with it. I do not think so. Fine us. I am ready to bear responsibility." "Swallow the bait, Arkady. See me as a repentant sinner," Victor thought, while his prefrontal cortex calculated Caverin's route. The psychological X-ray phase. This is a classic strategy of selective honesty. One sincere act is capable of hiding 100 foul ones. Victor uses a cognitive bias known as the truth bias. People tend to believe those who admit their weaknesses or mistakes, as this lowers defensive barriers. By confessing to a minor, by corporate standards, crime, Victor creates a reputation for himself as an honest player in Caverin's eyes. Caverin will now subconsciously look for confirmation of this honesty in the rest of the documents. He will stop looking for a false bottom where it actually is. In the share takeover schemes that Victor conducted through nominees in offshores. Biologically, Caverin experiences a release of oxytocin, the hormone of trust. His brain marks Victor as a safe informant. The hunter's instinct is dulled, giving way to a sense of professional superiority. The counter-strike phase. Caverin spent 3 hours in the office. He was so engrossed in Victor's honest report that he missed strange transactions to the accounts of the Orion Fund. "I appreciate your frankness, Victor," the inspector said on his way out. "There will be a fine, but I will note your cooperation. Mark will have a long conversation with my colleagues." Victor closed the door behind him. His face instantly became emotionless. The 8 million fine was a negligible price to pay for Caverin to become his blind tool against Mark. Lesson number 6. Honesty is a tool, not a virtue. Use it as a smokescreen. Confess to the small to hide the great. Your confession is not a surrender, it is an investment in the enemy's trust. Chapter 7. The Art of Surrender. Victory through defeat, the collision phase, the board of directors. Mark sat in the center, beaming with self-satisfaction. He demanded that Victor publicly apologize for unfounded accusations and voluntarily transfer the right of veto on key issues. "Victor, we are waiting." Mark tapped his fingers on the table. "Either you admit you were wrong, or we initiate your complete alienation from management." Victor slowly stood up. He looked defeated. His shoulders were slumped and his voice sounded muffled. "You are right, Mark. I went too far in my suspicion. I offer my apologies to the board. I will sign the transfer of powers. I need time to come to my senses." A whisper ran through the hall. The shareholders looked at each other. Mark did not hide a triumphant smirk. He believed that he had broken Victor. "Rejoice," Victor's inner voice whispered. "Your ego is blinding you right now. You think that I have given up, but I have simply stopped resisting your pressure so that you would fly into the abyss by inertia." The psychological X-ray phase. Victor uses strategic surrender. In social hierarchy, direct struggle often leads to mutual destruction. By surrendering, Victor deprives Mark of a target for attack. When you resist, you feed the enemy's aggression. When you surrender, you cause the aggressor to enter a state of cognitive closure. Mark believes that the battle is over. He relaxes. His level of vigilance drops to a minimum. He stops expecting a blow because the enemy is defeated. This is a biological mechanism for saving energy. The predator's brain turns off the combat mode as soon as the prey stops twitching. But Victor is not prey. He is a virus that enters the system under the guise of an error. The counterstrike phase. Having signed the papers, Victor received the right to a medical leave. This gave him 3 weeks of complete freedom of action outside of Mark's field of vision. While Mark celebrated victory and rebuilt the company structure for himself, Victor from the shadows was finalizing a deal to buy out Mark's own debts from third-party lenders. By the time Mark realized that the right of veto he had received now meant nothing in a company that de facto belonged to Victor's lender, it was already too late. Lesson number 7. Surrender when it is beneficial. Surrender gives you time to regroup and deprives the enemy of the opportunity to deliver a crushing blow. Make your defeat his biggest mistake. Chapter 8. Creating Scarcity and the Law of Absence. The collision phase, Victor disappeared. He turned off his phones, did not answer emails, and did not show up at the office. Without his participation, the company's work began to stall. It turned out that only Victor possessed personal connections with key suppliers in Asia, who worked exclusively on trust in the boss. Mark tried to negotiate himself, but he was ignored. Sales fell by 20% in 2 weeks. The shareholders began to panic. "Where is he?" Mark yelled at the secretary. "Find him. The company is falling apart." At this time, Victor was in a small house in the mountains, 500 kilometers from the city. He read books and watched the company's quotes crawl down. He knew, the longer he was gone, the higher his price would be. The psychological X-ray phase. The law of economic scarcity, transferred to human relations, is working here. The value of any resource is determined by its rarity. Victor's constant presence made him familiar, almost like inventory. His disappearance created an information and operational vacuum. Biologically, this is related to the brain's reward system. When we lose something, the value of that object in our perception increases manifold. Loss aversion. Mark and the shareholders now focus not on Victor's mistakes, but on his indispensability. Their brains generate a fear of loss that forces them to idealize the absent leader. The counterstrike phase. When the shares fell to a critical point, Victor sent Mark one short message. "I am ready to return, but I dictate the terms. You leave the post of general manager, without severance pay." Mark, hounded by shareholders and banks, was forced to agree. His victory from 3 weeks ago turned into ashes. Lesson number 8. Your presence should be valuable, but your absence should be indispensable. Leave on time to make them feel your weight. If you cannot be replaced, you cannot be pushed around. Chapter 9. The Mirror Effect. Reflection of Fear. The collision phase, the final conversation with Mark. Mark came to Victor's old office, hoping for a peace deal. He began to behave aggressively, trying to regain control through old habits, shouting, threats, accusations of betrayal. Victor did not respond with aggression. He became a mirror. When Mark shouted, Victor lowered his voice to a whisper, forcing Mark to listen. When Mark waved his hands, Victor sat absolutely still, folding his fingers into a steeple. "You destroyed everything, Vic. You are a traitor." Mark was spluttering with saliva. Victor looked at him with a slight, almost paternal smile. "You destroyed everything, Mark. You betrayed me. I merely allowed you to see the consequences of your decisions." Victor began to repeat Mark's gestures, but in a slowed-down, caricatured pace. Mark stopped short. He felt stupid, as if he were barking at a reflection in the water. The psychological X-ray phase. The mirror effect, mirroring, is a powerful means of disorientation. When you reflect the opponent's behavior, you force him to see himself from the outside. This causes a metacognitive shock in him. If you respond to aggression with aggression, you give the enemy energy to continue the fight. If you mirror him, he loses his footing. His brain tries to recognize your pattern of behavior and finds in it himself. This causes deep internal discomfort and a sense of loss of control. The counter-strike phase. Mark fell silent. His ardor died out. He looked like a man who had suddenly realized he was naked in the middle of a crowded square. "What do you want?" he asked in a broken voice. "For you to sign a confession of machinations with offshores." Victor pushed a piece of paper toward him. "Otherwise, Cavern will find out that those 8 million I confessed to were only the tip of your iceberg." Mark took the pen. His hand was no longer trembling. It was paralyzed by inevitability. Lesson number 9. Do not try to outshout the enemy. Reflect him. Become his mirror, and he himself will see his weaknesses and be horrified by them. The one who masters himself always masters the one who does not master himself. Chapter 10. The Final Cleanup. Strike the shepherd, the collision phase. Victor stands before a mirror in his new office. On the table lie signed documents regarding his full restoration of rights and the dismissal of Mark's entire team. He did not negotiate with each one individually. He struck at the head of the Hydra. Mark was the shepherd for this group of traitors. As soon as the shepherd fell, the sheep scattered. Victor fired them all on the same day, blocking their passes. Elena called him 40 times. He blocked her number without even reading the messages. Stepan Gorsky tried to negotiate, but Victor simply sent his case to the prosecutor's office. The psychological X-ray phase. The law of power states, "Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter." In any group, there is a center of power. Spending energy on fighting the periphery is a beginner's mistake. Victor focused exclusively on Mark. Having destroyed his reputation, finances, and psychological stability, he automatically neutralized everyone who relied on him. Biologically, this is a return to the alpha structure. As soon as the leader of the pack suffers a defeat, the hierarchy is instantly rebuilt. Those who betrayed Victor yesterday are sending him resumes today, hoping for mercy. But mercy is the lot of the weak. The counter-strike phase. Victor went out onto the balcony. The city lay at his feet, shimmering with millions of lights. He no longer felt the cold. He himself had become the source of this cold. He took his old Parker, the same one he was clutching in the first chapter, and slowly threw it into the trash can. He no longer needs tools from a past life. Lesson number 10. Do not leave the enemy a chance for a rematch. Destroy not only his strength, but also his hope. Power does not tolerate half measures. Either you are the hunter, or you are part of the landscape. Epilogue. You have read to the end. Your ego probably protests. You want to believe that the world is kinder and people are better. But now, when you walk down the street, you will not see just passers-by. You will see gestures of dominance. You will hear pauses in conversations. You will feel how someone is trying to push your buttons. And now you have a choice: to remain a herbivore or to start studying the rules of the game. Remember, a predator does not hate its prey. It simply understands the prey's mechanics better than the prey understands itself. Watch your neck, or start biting first.